In the small town of Cedar Grove, where cobblestone streets and historic houses held the secrets of generations, lived a boy named Ethan. But what no one knew was that behind his welcoming smile and kind eyes, Ethan carried a burden that consumed him day after day. The town, which seemed like a peaceful refuge, became the backdrop for internal battles only he was aware of. Ethan, always willing to help and offer a comforting word, found himself increasingly lost in his own thoughts, unsure of how to escape the maze of insecurities that trapped him. Since childhood, Ethan had been the boy everyone admired, intelligent, kind, and always in a good mood. His parents raised him with solid values, and he consistently stood out as a dedicated young man, both at school and at home. However, things are not always what they seem. Behind the facade of perfection, Ethan began to face a challenge invisible to many but devastating for him. Anxiety, that silent enemy, started to infiltrate his life, affecting every aspect of his routine. And the scariest part was that no one around him seemed to notice the battle he was fighting in silence. School, once a place of learning and fun, became the stage for his deepest anxieties. Ethan began to notice that his classmates, those he once considered friends, were drifting away. Conversations he couldn't keep up with and laughter that always seemed to be at his expense began to erode his self-confidence. Each day became an internal struggle, and Ethan started to wonder how much longer he could keep up appearances before he fell apart. The cheerful, outgoing boy was disappearing, replaced by someone he barely recognized. Behind the closed doors of his room, Ethan faced his greatest battles. Nights, once peaceful and filled with dreams, were now plagued by incessant thoughts that robbed him of sleep. The fear of being judged, of not being accepted, grew stronger each day, and Ethan felt like he was losing control of his own life. Anxiety, which began as a whisper, now screamed in his ears, and he didn't know who to turn to. The town that once gave him security now seemed like a maze of uncertainties, where every corner brought a new fear to confront. But amidst this turmoil, something unexpected was about to happen. A simple interaction, an apparently casual encounter, would forever change the course of Ethan's life. The turning point was near, and although he didn't know it yet, that desperate situation would become the starting point for a profound transformation. Ethan's story teaches us that no matter how dark the night may seem, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel, ready to guide us back to peace and balance. And it is on this journey of overcoming that we discover the true meaning of inner strength. Ethan was no longer the same. Each day, school became a harder place to face. Once sociable and involved, he now found himself on the sidelines of conversations and activities that had once brought him joy. The laughter echoing through the hallways no longer felt welcoming. It always seemed to be directed at him, laden with sarcasm and malice. His old friends, the ones he once thought would be there for him forever, now ignored him or, worse, joined in the jokes that hurt him deeply. Anxiety began to take over his life in an overwhelming way, and Ethan could no longer find the comfort he once felt at school. Nights became moments of endless anguish. Ethan would lie in bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, disturbing thoughts swirled in his mind, as if there was no escape. He repeatedly questioned what he had done wrong, why people were distancing themselves, and whether he would ever be happy again. Anxiety tightened his chest, and the sense of loneliness deepened with each passing day. Even at home, where he should have found support, Ethan withdrew, hiding from his family what was really happening. He was afraid of worrying them or that they wouldn't understand. It was on one of these dark days that Ethan, seeking a refuge where he could hide from the world, entered the school bathroom and locked himself in one of the stalls. There, in the silence, he finally allowed the tears he had been holding back to fall. The weight of loneliness, fear, and anxiety seemed to crush him. But as he cried, something unexpected happened. A soft, calm voice came from outside the stall. "Hey, are you okay?" asked the voice. It was Ryan, the new student at school, someone Ethan barely knew. Ryan was different. He wasn't part of the groups that mocked Ethan, and his presence there was a total surprise. Ryan persisted, without rushing or judging. "You don't have to go through this alone," he said, conveying a sense of safety that Ethan hadn't felt in a long time. Hesitant, Ethan opened the door, and what he saw was a sincere look, full of understanding. Ryan shared with Ethan that he, too, had gone through tough times at his old school and knew what it was like to feel out of place and anxious. Ryan's words were like a balm for Ethan, who finally began to feel that he wasn't entirely alone in his struggle. They started talking more often, and Ryan became not only a confidant but also a friend Ethan could rely on. Gradually, Ryan's friendship and support began to restore the strength Ethan thought he had lost. The friendship with Ryan brought a light into Ethan's life, but the journey to overcome his anxiety and the isolation he felt was far from simple. Despite Ryan's support, Ethan still battled daily with his dark thoughts and a persistent sense of inadequacy. One day, after a series of cruel comments in class, Ethan felt that he could no longer endure it. The internal pressure built up like a storm ready to explode, and he didn't know how to release all the pain he had been holding in silence. That afternoon, Ethan once again found himself in the school bathroom, the place he now considered a refuge, but which also symbolized his anguish. This time, however, the crisis was more intense. Sitting on the cold floor of the stall, Ethan felt his chest tighten in a way he had never experienced before. His breathing became rapid and shallow, as if the air was slipping away, and his heart pounded uncontrollably. He tried to calm himself, but the feeling of panic only grew stronger. Ethan began to feel like he was losing control, like he might pass out or something worse. It was as if the world around him was collapsing, and he couldn't find a solid ground to stand on. The loneliness was overwhelming, and for the first time, Ethan realized he needed help, but he didn't know how to ask for it. Then, in the midst of his despair, Ethan heard Ryan's voice again. Concerned about his friend's sudden disappearance, Ryan had come looking for him. "Ethan, I'm here, open the door," Ryan said firmly, but with no hint of impatience. Barely able to speak, Ethan managed to unlock the door, revealing his state of complete distress. Ryan, seeing him in such a condition, didn't hesitate to act. He knelt beside Ethan, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, and began to speak in a calm and comforting tone. "Breathe with me, Ethan. Slowly. We'll get through this together." Ryan's words began to cut through the fog of panic that surrounded Ethan, and gradually, he started to regain control of his breathing. Ryan's presence was crucial in that moment. He not only helped Ethan through the panic attack, but also became the first person to whom Ethan could express all the pain he was feeling. Between sobs, Ethan talked about the constant fear, the sense of not belonging, and how powerless he felt in the face of the challenges anxiety brought into his life. Ryan listened to every word attentively, without interrupting or judging. When Ethan finished, exhausted but relieved to have finally opened up, Ryan looked him in the eyes and said, "Ethan, you don't have to face this alone. We'll get help together. There are people who care and can help you overcome this." It was in that moment that Ethan realized the road to recovery would be long. But he was no longer alone. The strength he desperately needed began to emerge, not only from within but also from the support of those who truly cared. After that day in the bathroom, Ethan and Ryan made the decision to seek help. Together, they spoke with Ethan's parents, who, deeply concerned, immediately sought out a mental health professional. Ethan began attending therapy sessions where, for the first time, he could understand and manage the anxiety that had tormented him for so long. Initially, he was nervous and unsure, but over time, Ethan learned to identify the triggers of his anxiety and develop strategies to cope with them. Therapy became a safe space where he could explore his feelings and work on building his self-confidence. With the support of Ryan, his family, and his therapist, Ethan began to rebuild his life, step by step. He started participating in extracurricular activities that interested him, like the book club and the school's volunteer group. These new social circles provided him with friendships based on shared interests and mutual respect. The sense of isolation that once overwhelmed him began to fade, and Ethan found himself surrounded by people who valued him for who he was, not for who he felt he should be. He realized that by opening up and seeking help, he was creating a new beginning for himself. The change in Ethan's life was also noticeable at school. Over time, the classmates who had once been part of the teasing noticed the difference in him. He was no longer the withdrawn and silent boy who suffered in silence. Now, he exuded a new confidence that came from self-acceptance and the unconditional support he had found. Some of those classmates even approached him to apologize for their behavior, acknowledging the negative impact they had caused. Instead of holding grudges, Ethan accepted their apologies and chose to move forward, understanding that forgiveness was also part of his healing process. Ethan continued on his journey, becoming an example for other young people facing similar challenges. He began sharing his story at small school meetings and community events, encouraging others not to be afraid to seek help when they needed it. Ryan remained by his side, as a loyal friend and companion on the journey. Their friendship grew even stronger, rooted in a deep experience of overcoming obstacles and mutual support. Ethan knew that there would still be difficult days ahead, but he also knew he was no longer alone. He had found the strength to face his anxiety, and above all, he had discovered that true courage lies in asking for help and accepting the support of those who care. Ethan's story is a powerful reminder that no matter how dark the days may seem, there is always hope and light ahead. Anxiety and fear can often make us feel isolated and trapped, but true strength lies in recognizing when we need help and seeking support. Ethan teaches us that facing these challenges is not a sign of weakness, but of courage. By taking the first step and opening up to Ryan, he discovered that he wasn't alone and that there are people willing to reach out when we need it most. It's important to remember that in times of difficulty, finding someone to trust can make all the difference. It might be a friend, a family member, or even a professional. What matters is not keeping everything bottled up inside. Anxiety often grows in silence and solitude, but when shared, it loses its grip. Ethan learned that by sharing his worries and accepting the support of others, he was building a safety net that would help him overcome his fears and insecurities. Ethan's journey also shows us that recovery is a process that requires time and patience. There's no magic solution, but with persistence and support, it's possible to find balance again. Ethan not only overcame the hardest moments but also became a source of inspiration for others, demonstrating that it's possible to emerge from the depths stronger and more resilient. His story is proof that even in the most challenging situations, change is possible, and the future can be brighter than we imagine. If you found yourself relating to Ethan's story, know that you are not alone. Just like him, you can find the strength to face the challenges life throws your way. Don't be afraid to seek help and open up to those who care about you. Life is full of ups and downs, but each obstacle we overcome makes us stronger and better prepared for what lies ahead. Remember, courage isn't about never feeling fear, but about continuing to fight despite it. If this story touched your heart, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and let us know your own experiences in the comments. Together, we can create a community of support and inspiration, where no one has to face their challenges alone. May God bless your journey, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.